The first sign came when Mark missed the turnoff to the ridge trail. We'd been following his lead since dawn, each of us trusting his experience, his easy smile, his stories about mountaineering in Colorado and backpacking through the Smokies. He looked the part too, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, the kind of man who could tie a taut-line hitch with one hand and brew coffee with the other. But that morning, the sun was already high when I noticed his compass dangling unused from his pack strap, swinging with each confident stride. "Trail veers east here," I said quietly, pointing at the faded marker. He waved me off with a grin. "I've done this loop a dozen times. Trust me, the map's out of date." We followed him another hour through thick spruce, the ground soft with needles. The trail faded, then vanished. Mark stopped, scanned the tree line, and scratched at his beard. "Must have shifted from storms last year," he muttered, though I caught the tightness in his voice. The group, 6 of us in all, watched him expectantly. A couple of the stronger hikers shrugged and dropped their packs, taking the break as a gift. I pretended to adjust my bootlaces while studying Mark's face. Sweat had soaked the brim of his cap. His hands trembled faintly when he reached for his water bottle. When he finally declared that the ridge must be just a little farther up, no one argued. We trudged after him, but the incline grew steeper, the footing looser. Loose shale skittered under my boots. I wanted to speak up, to ask for a map check, to suggest turning back. But I was the newest member of the group, the quiet one who joined through a friend of a friend. By afternoon, clouds had rolled in from the west, and thunder muttered somewhere beyond the peaks. Mark's pace quickened, as though he could outrun the storm. When he stumbled on a root, catching himself on one knee, I saw a flash of exhaustion cross his face. "Let's take 5, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He straightened, jaw set. "We need to make camp before dark. The ridge is right ahead." But his right ahead stretched into another mile, then 2. My thighs burned. The wind sharpened, carrying the smell of rain and distant lightning. I looked around at the others, faces flushed, eyes uncertain. And for the first time I felt something colder than the mountain air, the realization that our leader might not be leading us anywhere at all. By the time the first drops fell, we'd lost the faint trace of a trail completely. The rain came sudden and cold, soaking through my jacket, turning the slope to slick mud. Mark pushed on ahead, shoulders hunched, muttering to himself as if reciting an invisible map. The rest of us followed like a loose chain of ghosts through the dripping spruce. When lightning cracked across the valley, I saw his face in the flash, drawn, pale, eyes wide. The confidence that had carried us up here was cracking too, piece by piece. I'd seen that look before in a hiker who'd pushed past exhaustion, part pride, part panic. We found a cluster of boulders that offered a little cover. "We should stop," I said, raising my voice over the rain. "Wait out the storm. Regroup." Mark turned sharply, water streaming from his hat brim. "If we stop now, we'll freeze before nightfall. We make it to the ridge. There's shelter there." His voice carried that dangerous edge of certainty that comes from fear trying to disguise itself. No one answered him. I caught the eye of Jenna, who was shivering under her poncho, lips blue. She mouthed, "What do we do?" I didn't know. I was no leader. I'd barely done 2 weekend hikes before this, but the compass in my pocket tugged at my thoughts, heavy with its silent truth. I pulled it out, shielding it from the rain with my hand. The needle swung north, opposite the direction Mark was heading. "Mark," I started gently, "your ridge should be east, not west." He rounded on me. "You think I don't know where I'm going?" His tone cut like the wind. Everyone froze. The rain hissed between us. For a long moment he just stared at me, then turned away, trudging upward again. The group hesitated, unsure whom to follow. That was the moment I realized authority isn't always earned by volume or confidence, it's earned by care. I stepped in front of the others and pointed downhill toward a line of darker trees. "There's a creek down that way. Water always leads to a trail. Let's get to lower ground before this storm turns worse." No one argued. Maybe they were too cold, too tired. Maybe they'd already lost faith. We started moving, slow but steady. the way you walk when you've stopped hoping for shortcuts. Behind us, I could hear Mark's boots crunching through wet leaves, following in silence. For the first time all day, he wasn't leading anymore. The storm broke fully as we descended, wind roaring through the pines like a living thing. Rain hammered our hoods, and the ground turned to soup beneath our boots. Every step sent little rivers of mud sliding past our ankles. I could barely hear my own breathing over the constant crash of water and wind, but I kept my eyes fixed on the downward slope. If we could just reach the creek, I thought, we'd have something solid to follow, something more trustworthy than our own guesswork. Lightning ripped through the grey sky again, close enough that I felt it vibrate in my chest. Someone shouted behind me, "Tom!" I think, as a branch snapped and fell across the path. We hauled it aside, panting. When I looked back, I saw Mark standing a few paces higher on the ridge, drenched and unmoving. He looked older somehow, as if the rain had washed years onto his face instead of off it. "Come on!" I yelled, gesturing for him to follow. For a second, I thought he wouldn't, but then he nodded slowly and stumbled down toward us, his steps heavy, deliberate. When he reached the group, he didn't say a word, just took the rear position, letting me take point. It wasn't triumph I felt then, but a strange mix of fear and clarity. Responsibility has a weight you don't recognize until it's dropped into your hands. Every turn I made, every word I spoke suddenly mattered in a way it hadn't an hour ago. At last the ground levelled and the roar of water replaced the wind. The creek cut through the forest in a rush of brown foam and fallen needles. We huddled under a stand of firs, catching our breath. The rain still fell, but softer now. Steam rose from our clothes. "We follow it downstream," I said. "It'll lead to the main trail." No one questioned me. We moved single file along the bank, careful not to slip. For the first time all day, the group seemed to move with purpose again. Even Mark followed quietly, his eyes on the ground. Hours passed. The light dimmed to that eerie blue twilight that comes after rain in the mountains. Finally, we spotted it. A trail marker nailed to a tree, worn but unmistakable. Relief rippled through the group, like warmth spreading through cold limbs. Jenna let out a shaky laugh. Tom clapped me on the shoulder. I just stood there, breathing hard, feeling the tremor in my hands. We'd made it back to a path, but something had changed. Something in the balance between trust and truth. When Mark finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "Good call," he said, eyes downcast. And that was all. We camped that night in a small clearing beside the creek, a patch of flat ground sheltered by spruce and alder. The storm had moved east, leaving behind a damp silence and a faint smell of ozone. Mist curled through the trees as twilight gave way to a bruised kind of darkness. Everyone moved slowly, worn thin by the day. Packs dropped with soft thuds, boots were unlaced without a word. I gathered kindling from a fallen log, coaxing a reluctant flame to life. The fire sputtered at first, spitting steam from wet bark, then finally caught. Orange light flickered across tired faces, Jenna's pale and drawn, Tom's streaked with mud, and Mark's hollow-eyed, sitting apart from the rest. We ate what was left of the trail mix and jerky, too weary to care about variety. The silence between bites felt heavy, like we were all waiting for someone to speak a truth we hadn't yet dared to name. Finally, Mark looked up. "I owe you all an apology," he said quietly. His voice was rough, stripped of its usual confidence. "I pushed too hard. I thought I could beat the weather, prove something to myself." No one interrupted. The fire popped softly, and a breeze shifted the smoke between us. He went on, "You start thinking experience makes you invincible. That a compass isn't necessary when you've done this a dozen times before, but that's exactly when you stop seeing what's right in front of you." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure if comfort or silence would help more. So I just nodded, letting the fire fill the spaces between his words. Later, when most of the group had crawled into their tents, I stayed awake by the coals. Mark sat across from me, staring into the glow. He looked smaller now, almost fragile in the dim light. "You did good back there," he said finally. "Better than I did. I just followed the creek, I said. He gave a tired smile. Sometimes that's all leadership is, seeing what's real when everyone else is chasing what they think should be. The wind moved through the trees like distant surf, and a barred owl called somewhere downriver. I stared into the embers until they blurred and dimmed, wondering if courage always felt this quiet, like the steady beat of rain on canvas, like the calm that follows a storm you didn't think you could outlast. When I finally crawled into my sleeping bag, the last thing I saw was the faint light of dawn creeping through the fog, silvering the world back into focus. Morning came soft and cold, with low fog tangled in the branches and dew pooling on every leaf. The forest looked scrubbed clean, almost new. I woke to the steady hiss of the creek nearby and the faint crackle of the rekindled fire. Mark was already up, boiling water in a blackened pot. His movements were slow, but sure again. No bravado, no hurried gestures, just quiet focus. The others emerged from their tents one by one, stretching stiff limbs, brushing the night from their hair. There was a different air among us, calmer, more even. The mountain that had loomed like a threat the day before now seemed almost kind, its peaks veiled in a soft veil of mist. We ate oatmeal in tin mugs and packed in silence, the kind that doesn't demand words. When Mark handed me the map, folded neatly, I hesitated. "You're better with it," he said, offering a faint grin. "You lead us out." For a heartbeat, I almost protested, out of habit, but something in his expression, humility perhaps, stopped me. I tucked the map into my pocket, adjusted my pack straps, and started down the trail. The others fell in behind without question. The path followed the creek for several miles, the sun slowly burning away the mist. Birdsong returned, tentative at first, then full and bright. We crossed a narrow bridge slick with moss, climbed a gentle ridge, and by noon the parking lot came into view through the trees. A scatter of cars, sunlight glinting off windshields like distant fires. We stopped just short of it, as if stepping back into civilization too quickly might break something fragile we'd earned out there. Mark came up beside me, his boots crunching on gravel. "Funny," he said, eyes on the horizon, "how one wrong turn can show you more than a dozen right ones ever could." I smiled, not because it was profound, but because it was true. We'd all been tested in quiet ways. Him by his pride, me by my fear of speaking up, the others by the simple trust that keeps people moving forward together. When we finally shouldered off our packs and loaded the vans, no one made a big show of goodbyes. Just nods, small smiles, promises of another trip someday. As I climbed into the passenger seat, I looked back at the trailhead, the trees closing in over it like a curtain. I thought about the moment I'd stepped forward in the rain, about how leadership isn't a crown you wear. It's a weight you carry until someone else can bear it again. The road curved away through the valley, sunlight flickering through pine. And for the first time since the storm, I felt the deep, steady peace that comes only after you've faced the wilderness within as much as the one outside.